So let's talk about banners. Banners for LinkedIn specifically. And in this video, we're going to discuss what these people are doing with their banners. These are six-figure creators who have businesses operating already. So we could study and see what is working. And this is how they decided to represent themselves in their particular world, in their niche. And you can see how they really use certain elements to represent themselves as a credible source in this niche. So let's get started. The first one we're going to look at is Parsons. Now, Paul has a good looking banner because it uses a lot of creative elements that are also more forward than the other ones. So first thing that you see here is Seedly, which he is probably affiliated with. And then you have a couple elements at play here. So there's a Coca-Cola in frame, and in frame as in it's framed up in something, put sideways, and it looks like it's a photograph of this Coca-Cola art piece on display. And it is imposed on there with this other design element in front of it. And this other element in front of it gives it this separation. So his work, I'm guessing it's alluding to his work being the Coca-Cola thing, is in the back, while the front stuff is his other banner. So it's kind of like a postcard. Imagine you have a postcard and there's something in the postcard. Now the thing in the postcard is the Coca-Cola design. So now he has this whole display going for you. You have this frame looking into his work, and it has this big saying that says tailor-made content, meaning that he'll make custom content for you. And this is on brand with him because he does media work. So this is what is going to drive his consumers to, because his consumers are going to him for media stuff. And the way that he presented this is actually very smart because it's not just internet media. The way that he uses some of these design elements are also present in TV media, big media, Western Hollywood media, which has a lot of money behind it and a lot of backing. And all of that money could be transferred to him because he's representing himself as somebody that's like, hey, I understand your world, so I'm using something that speaks to you. So if you look at ad campaigns or ad agencies, they might still use this type of format where there's a big font, there's the super bold, all capitalized, and then the outline with the clear font in the back. That's kind of a new thing that I've noticed too. I mean, these techniques have been around forever, but I've started to see more of a resurgence of that recently. And I think it looks good. Now, the next one is Chris Walker. Chris Walker here looks a bit more young, and his companies that he is representing here is more something that is giving me a technology type of vibe. So he's using all black. You could also use a darker colorway too, but all black is a safe choice. Sometimes you could have some that are black faded to gray. That's also a nice look too. But here, all black, and he uses very small fonts, small words here. And the thing with this that I've noticed recently is that some of the newer, younger companies have started doing this very small word and font, and it's like more of I feel like the aesthetic world is leaning towards more of a quiet luxury kind of thing. So even though this isn't in particular a luxury niche or a luxury product, but it's in a way that's saying like, hey, we have some funding, we're established, we're a real company. And they are doing this small kind of well-presented, minimalist look to it. If we look at other technology companies and newer companies too, you'll see that used a lot versus back in the day where it's super big, super bold. But this all comes together as well because of the spacing that he uses. So if you were to just copy this, right? Like when I first started designing and I was like, oh, this is super minimal, I can copy it. And my minimal stuff would turn out really nice too. It's just words on a blank background, right? But it's actually not. There's a lot of little intricacies when you're looking at this. So from this photo, this is the full banner. You can see the spacing, and after you click out of that and you're on his profile, you can see that spacing again. So the difference is that in the full-size photo, there's a lot more room on top, and in this one, it's evenly spaced on the bottom and on the top. And I mean under the text of like the smallest text here, under there's some room, and then on the top, there's some room as well. And on the side, it's also kind of equidistant. So essentially that shows that this box, this is all in this section. And if you look even clearer, it's almost as if he is using the rule of thirds, because if you separate these into three, the bulk of it is in the middle third. So a third on top, third on the bottom, and then the middle third. Although you do see there's a bit of bleeding onto the lines if there were imaginary lines here, but that's perfect. It's just balanced very well. And if we look at some of the logos that he's presenting us with as well, you can see that there's Refine Labs, and he uses this green color for Refine Labs, which is if you have Razer products or Alienware type of stuff, like that has that type of futuristic technology green to it. So this is like a good color that goes with his black. And then under that, it's a smaller font, less bold. It just tells what these companies are doing. So B2B agency, GTM strategy, dark social content production. So it just shows what he does, what companies he's involved in. And from there, you would get an impression of who he is. Now, moving on to the next one, we have Melanie Bordon. And from a quick look, first impression, you can see that, oh, she's very well established because she has Wall Street Journal, LA Weekly, Entrepreneur, Forbes, Fast Company, New York Weekly. Now, the thing is, you could actually get on these platforms if you want to, either through paid promotions. You can have somebody that you know that can put you in these articles, or you can pitch them, or there's another service too called Help a Reporter Out, where they post what needs they have for a report they're doing, and they also show their publication. And you could also, based on that, apply for it, and then potentially they might feature you. And then if they feature you, you could put it on here. So it's cool for credibility building, but if you know how that works, then it's not as like, oh, wow. It's probably like the New York Times bestseller thing, is that it's kind of connected, and if you want to get on there, you could. So that's the first thing that I noticed, at least. And then there's also the Borden Group on top. That's her company that she's involved with. And then for her slogan, her tagline, grow on social with a human touch. There's 3 colorways that are used here: white, the dark blue for the background, and then a faded blue. So these are all complementary, like it works together. It doesn't have one that's overpowering another. You could do that too if you want to have like with a human touch stand out. You could probably change that to another color that works with this blue. But in this case, it doesn't have to be so loud. This works as well. It's still in that blue family, and it's different from the white so that it catches your eyes a bit more. And with her font too, it's a pretty good font choice. I like this font choice. It's kind of, it's got that serif look that's coming back now. So serif fonts, the fonts with the hooks and stuff on the end, is, I've felt like there's a resurgence in that over the last few years, whereas back in the day when I first started designing, advertising, it was all sans serif. So down, you see that she has maybe a couple values that her company or what she stands for is. So business to personal, human to brand, and synchronized messaging. So this is essentially what she stands for, and she puts that a bit under her tagline. Now, this is very well put together as well. I like how the big slogan is on the half up, like the halfway point up, and then the other stuff, the smaller stuff, is on the halfway point down. So this is also another way of separating out your text. It's pretty balanced because the top is very strong and heavy, while the bottom is just supplementing the top, so it's not as strong and heavy. This is a good candidate to to recreate if you're trying to establish, like, you have credibility and you also want to showcase what it is that you stand for, and also like have a big slogan. I like this style. It's very professional, it's easy to do, and it looks good. Now the next one, this one I thought was very interesting because he has a big account. He has a lot of people that are following his stuff, and his banner is literally just, I help you make money with AI, tech, and digital skills. Now, I have to add, there's a caveat to this because he already has a big page, and I'm sure he has the experience and the credibility to back this up. So it's not as if he's still a new person or page that needs credibility. There's this saying that the best programmers can have the worst websites and they would still get hired because they are amazing programmers. So this might be a similar case. He's big on LinkedIn, he posts, people come to his page, and it's straightforward, direct to the point. Now, if we break down a bit on the colors, I do like the colors as well. It's black, and I want to say this is a bit of a gold off white, off gold kind of thing. It's not completely white, but it's close enough that it looks like white, but it stands out because it's got a hint of a yellow or a gold hue to it. So this is just cool to note. Anyone can do this, but I don't think if you're starting out, you should do something like this. Definitely something else, because there's a lot of space on here that you could take advantage of. Maybe there's a company name that you want to promote on top, or maybe some design element that you could add on the bottom, maybe top teacher, credible knowledge something, or a designer or something like that. There's a lot of real estate that could be used. So if you're new, I wouldn't do something like this, but if you have credibility already, your page is huge and you have people that would just come to you regardless, yeah, you could do something like this. Now this one, Eric Partaker, he has a very for me, a very Western type of, this is TV, radio, and gives me more of a feel of like, this person was very credible when I was growing up, and it's an evolution of that type of style. So you could also see here too, with the type of companies that he's linked on the bottom that he's probably been featured on: Wall Street Journal, CNN, BBC, The Apprentice, The Economist, Forbes, ABC, CNBC. So The Apprentice, like when that was around, I was really young. And I guess that goes in hand with what I just said, with this being an evolution of when that time was big. So back in the 90s, 2000s, television was a huge player, and social media wasn't a force as it is now. So those players still have a similar aesthetic to this. It's very, like, I want to say Huffington Post as well, where these fonts are just really happy, and kind of brings back this sense of like, I'm going to Barnes and Nobles, I'm in America, I'm maybe in a trustworthy Western American establishment. And so that works in his favor because he's probably of that age, he's older than me, he's trying to appeal to people who appreciate Wall Street Journal, BBC, Forbes, ABC, CNBC. That crowd tends to lean a bit older. And with the colorways, it actually really does remind me of like the 2000 something as well. And that's not in a bad way, because it's done in a way that's tasteful for now, so it's not outdated. If you look at his fonts and stuff, you can see that as well, where it's very timeless, the way that this is spaced out, and the way that it is spaced out both vertically and horizontally. So how the letters are spaced apart and how the sentences are also spaced apart. We'll go into this more when we recreate this banner, but for now, just noticing all these little placements of his text, it's done very well. And even this one, subscribe now, is very interesting, right? Because it's kind of sideways, and that's a joke that I've seen Gen Z make about millennials, is that millennials sometimes post on social media and make their posts sideways, like the text, and Gen Z kind of hates on that. I think they're just poking fun, but yeah, that's one of the things that they joke about. And he has his slightly angled, And personally, the rationale behind that, or at least when I was in marketing or when I got into social media, was that since this is curved, it brings more attention to it. And yeah, his peak performance insights is yellow, so it stands out from the rest. And also, if you look down a bit here, you can see join 235,000 plus, receiving weekly tips via email and social. All right. So he highlights the 235,000 as well. And then on the left here, he has this phone graphic with, I'm guessing this is his newsletter. So his newsletter is showing peak performance insights, which is his insights on how to perform. And this is a good design too. If you're trying to appeal to an older audience, you're maybe in America, Midwest, West Coast, East Coast, and you're trying to appeal to people maybe our parents' age, 45, 50 plus, then you can do an aesthetic like this and it'll make you look really credible. Because if you think back in that time, there's not too many designers, even like filming and photos and stuff. At that time, the barrier to get into that was a lot more difficult. So anyone with design, good design, is established as credible. So having his design style be similar to those of the credible institutions like these publications that he listed underneath is going to show him as being credible to the demographic he's appealing to. Now, the next one is Shulin Lee. I like her banner a lot because it is very internet. It is very modern to the times now. So let's break it down. On the top left, she has subscribe to After the Bar podcast. After the Bar is a different color, so it highlights that. And that's just a subtle thing. So I can see why she made it so small, because as you skim your eyes, you're just going to see subscribe to After the Bar and not pay so much attention for it. And then the next thing is follow for no nonsense career and culture insights. So no nonsense is highlighted, amazing. And on the right of that, you can see this arrow pointing in. And then you can see the spacing between the words. If you notice the word follow and career, the spacing between the two are kind of minimal. Whereas if you imagine you're typing it onto a document and you type follow and then you press enter and it spaces down, sometimes it spaces too much. And that's one of the big elements between a design that has been thought of, like there's some thought put into it, versus a design that had no thought put into it. You could also see this with the spacing of the letters as well. It's a lot closer together than if you were to just default use it on a Word document. So with that being said, that's the top part. Bold, strong, and you could also notice, it's actually kind of hard to notice, if you have to zoom in, you can see that she used a rectangle for the part that showed the publications that she's in. But for this, honestly, I feel like this needs to be faded a bit better, but it's okay. This, you really got to zoom in to see, and that's something only a designer really looks at. Because the background has a grain or a texture to it. So it's obvious when you zoom in, but not super obvious, where if you're not a designer, you won't really notice that. Same with the subscribe to the After the Bar podcast part. Like you can see there's a rectangle on that part. But maybe that's just her design style to make it pop out. So with that, so the bottom, you have a rectangle that shows your credibility markers as seen by these places. South China Morning Post. I actually think I might have some stuff on what here. Sounds familiar. And on the right, it's a photo of her. No special effects on there. It's just cropped out. But yeah, I've seen some people do a glow effect or a highlighting effect or something, because sometimes when you put yourself on a photo, it doesn't blend so well, or you don't pop as much. But for here, it looks like the back is a lighter color, and she's got a darker palette to her, so she pops out. But yeah, this is done very well. Also, there's the other two badges right here. Number 1, SG, female creator, and lawyer turned recruiter, founder of Agent Legal. So there's some other credibility markers as well. First one is that one, to stand out in Singapore, because she has SG. And the second one, to show that she is a founder of a company. And if people are looking at her profile, they want to know, oh, she's a founder of a company. What's this company do? And then from there, they would probably check out the rest of her work and look at her company because she's the founder. So the next video I'm going to do, we're going to break down every single one of these designs and make them from scratch on Canva, so it's easy to follow. And if you want to work together, check the links below. I have a ton of stuff, resources, everything down there. And I'll see you in the next video.